With the release of every Hearthstone expansion, there is a period of time where cards are unveiled and the first thing us loyal citizens of the internet do is judge them. Of course you already know this. You've seen dozens of YouTubers and live streamers give their opinions on the cards of Boomsday, including me, hopefully. And more importantly, you've seen them fail spectacularly with their predictions. 2 weeks ago, I put myself under scrutiny and looked at exactly how I failed in my own ratings. After all, I am guilty of judgment lapses too. But now it's time to criticize the general Hearthstone population, and determine where we were wrong. I'll be looking at statistical trends rather than ratings individual people gave. I could make a whole video talking about ways that one streamer like Trump was wrong. Then again, Trump already does that. Good on you, good Trump. Anyways, let us begin. This is the top 5 Boomsday cards that players misrated. Star Aligner. The vast majority of Hearthstone players were convinced that this card would be garbage tier nonsense, being a war golem at worst and being impossible to activate at best. And all that effort just for a board clear? What good could this card possibly do? However, what this card lacks in basic rationale, it makes up for in pure synergistic effect, with Brand causing it to double in strength, bounce effects like Ancient Brewmaster allowing it to activate multiple times. And, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh right, Aviana and Kun. This card's power, once adequately unlocked, proved to be enough to become the driving force of one of WoW's strongest decks, and the card itself proved to be worth more than the 100 dust that people believed it would be. This is only number 5 on the list because all around, the logic for hating on this card was relatively sound. Its condition is remarkably hard to create without exactly the right deck. It just turns out that exactly the right deck was capable of existing. Get rid of Aviana and this card lacks the means of being powerful once again, but regardless, this was far from the trash tier that players expected it to be. Topsy-Turvy. People really laid it into me for my ratings of 2 cards in particular, Topsy-Turvy and Juicy Psychmelon. While I still believe Psychmelon was overrated and success attributes more to Aviana Kun, that's still debatable. However, the common idea with Topsy-Turvy is that this card is simply a better Inner Fire, which is a vast and inaccurate oversimplification. Thinking seriously about Topsy-Turvy, in what situation is this card better than Inner Fire? There are 2 answers, when you have exact lethal with it down to the last mana crystal, and when you want to kill a 0 attack minion. There are a few other edge cases, but let's face it, no one uses this card in those cases. Inner Fire, meanwhile, you can use before you have lethal. This gives it more options when it comes to victory over your opponent. The odds that you don't have enough mana for lethal are much less than the odds that you need to buff a shielded Northshire into a 5/5 powerhouse. And while the synergy with Test Subject is cute, the deck itself has too many parts to adequately work. It turns out 0 mana cards are typically not that good unless you have a specific plan for them, and the specific plan for Topsy-Turvy is not a very good one. Other, better plans exist. Luna's Pocket Galaxy. Of the cards I'll be covering today, this is definitely the card people rated most highly that also saw the lowest results. I was actually among that crowd. I should have mentioned it with my last video, but I figured, since it'd be in the spotlight right now, I'd just put a note that I was also fooled by this card. Now yes, this card is interesting and can combo with large minions nicely, but the thing is, you need to play at least 2 minions after this is played for it to be worth it, and that's after getting to turn 7 and playing a 7 mana do-nothing card. Dr. Boom does more on its first turn than this card does. At the same time, mana reduction is a concept that works great with some cards, but with others it often isn't worth the hurdles necessary. The Druid Quest suffered a very similar fate, and that card neither gets buried at the bottom of your deck, nor forces you to do nothing for a whole turn. You get a 5 mana 8/8 for your troubles. Like with a few other cards, people saw mana reduction and automatically assumed it'd be a broken effect, when in reality, the card is hard to play and fairly inconsistent. Alright guys, this will be a bit of a weird argument. Mecha'thun. I'm pretty sure when it came to this card, nobody knew exactly what to think. It was simply a card that nobody had considered before, and here it was, about to be released for us to play with. Some people figured, a deck must come into existence that will use this to break the game. Others figured, no, the whole ordeal is nearly impossible. The curve of ratings reflects these opinions. This card would be good, or it would be terrible. The end result? somewhere in the middle, as with most game balance. While there is definitely a strategy to be garnered with this card, other strategies can usually accomplish the goal of an OTK in a faster manner. But a few semi-legitimate decks have emerged from the woodwork that are halfway decent, and that may continue into the future as more cards come into existence. So while some people believe mecha'thun would be broken and some believed it would be garbage, it instead became fairly average. Funny that. Before I reveal the final card on this list, let's talk about Druid. Before Boomsday's release, everyone was horrified of Druid's potential, believing that it would dominate the entire game. Now Druid is certainly a problem, but they haven't become the overwhelmingly dominant force that people feared they would be. The exact details of this Druid problem are a story for another time. But there's one card that got people freaking out over Druid's potential from the get-go, at Boomsday's first announcement video. This card is, naturally, Biology Project. People were terrified of this card, believing it would bring an era of turn 3 oak hearts and ramp becoming the ultimate deck. These analysts decided to ignore the weaknesses of the card, the fact that it had no power behind it, and left you at both a mana and a card disadvantage. Despite Druid utilizing ramp in pretty much all of its decks, Spiteful excluded, only the rampiest of ramp decks actively use this card. Big, mecha'thun, and sometimes Mill utilize it, but most other decks don't bother. Like Innervate before it, this card itself has no true power, it simply enables other cards to be played. But then your opponent also gets a boost in that front, without requiring any cost to their resources. As such, most decks can't reasonably include a card that can oftentimes prove nearly as negative as it is positive. But players didn't see that. They used this card as the first example of how Druid would soon become the greatest menace of Hearthstone. And in the end, as strong as Druid might be, this card was not to blame. Here are some other cards that I considered for this list. Mulch Muncher. This card fit into one deck and one deck alone, a deck that sadly didn't work. Trump in particular advocated for this card and it did not succeed as well as predicted. Meteorologist. Players hated on this card, but it's perfectly average. Its deck is not quite good enough right now though, hence it only being a mention here. Spirit Bomb. This card was a little overrated, removal isn't as useful if you're damaging yourself in the process. And finally, Giggling Inventor. Just generally speaking, this card was underestimated. I covered this last week, so I won't beat a dead horse. Did I miss any cards you felt people misrated? Leave a comment and let me know. And while I have you here, I'm gonna be real for a second. I'm sorry uploads have been less frequent than they've been in the past. Things have been very busy for me for the last month, and this channel is still unfunded by YouTube, even though they should have started giving me money last April. It sucks because making these videos is my favorite thing to do, so not being able to make more of them is just really lame. I still do my best to get 1 or 2 videos out each week, and hopefully I can do even better soon. I've debated asking you all to pester YouTube on Twitter, but honestly, it probably wouldn't work. So I'm just going to keep going, and hopefully sometime soon, I can make this channel as big and fantastic as I want it to be. I appreciate your patience in the meantime. Alright guys, thanks for listening. Tune in next week for an analysis of card packs, and maybe an episode of custom card coverage if we're lucky. Thanks again, smile on the just, and I'll see you all next time.